Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, January 25th, 2022 regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. In accordance with Government Code 54953E, this meeting will be conducted by webinar and teleconference only. The physical location will not be provided for this meeting. All directors, including myself, are participating remotely. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director McIntosh will be joining us. Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young.
I'm here.
President Liddy.
Present. All right, thank you. If members of the public wish to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as address or phone number during the public comment. If we need this information, we will have you contact staff directly. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time has concluded. Do we have any speakers?
I have no hands for public comment. I have one. George Cleveland, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you, Risha. Good morning, President Linney, members of the board, General Manager Chan, and anyone else who is participating in the webinar. I'm George Cleveland. I'm the Chief Steward of Aspen Local 2019. I'm not here to talk about negotiations. I am here to talk about a couple other things. And it's come to my attention that in my last public comments, when I was concerned with someone trying to make a name for themselves, there was some potential confusion on who I was speaking about. I was talking about Derek McDonald, the General Counsel. And it kind of connects to this, I'm going to use scandal in quotation marks, involving some of our members and email usage or wrong. And we know that the folks did wrong. We know this, but the punishments that have been meted out have been too harsh. The Skelly hearings were basically a farce because from what I can gather is that the hearing officers were told to just listen to us and keep the decision as is for the three of us. The person in the other local had a different Skelly officer, and I know that person, and I realized, well, then that punishment would change, and it did. So it's focused on our folks, and it's very, very harsh, too harsh. What you've done, you actually fired one of our members, and the member that you fired is battling cancer. So you're firing someone who's dealing with cancer. So basically, by firing that person, you've jeopardized their health care because, being not with the district anymore, they don't have access to our great health care plan. So that's what you've done. And we, as I said, we expected that there would be some punishment from it because what was done was not right. But what you've done, and whatever your reasoning is, maybe you feel that you need to, show that, take your tough litigation skills and apply them to labor management. That's not where it belongs. And if you can say, oh, well, the department made the decision. Well, they don't make those decisions without your input because it's a legal matter, because it's a Skelly hearing. So, it's interesting, though, that you're a man and the three people who have been severely disciplined are all women. It almost seems like there might be some sexism here as well. I don't know. Maybe that's a bit of a reach, but it's wrong. And it's embarrassing. I mean, again, I'll say it again. You fired someone who has cancer. Is that the company we've become now? That when people are down and struggling, that we kick them? Is that who we are? Is that who we've become? I've been with this company almost 27 years. And frankly, this is like the worst ever. It's appalling. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. I mean, we're better than this. At least I thought we were. I mean, do you want to come work for an agency that actually, if someone is in trouble, that they push them out like that? Because the big boss has an issue with a retiree and they can't get at the retiree, so they get at the active employees instead. And I'm referring to the special assistant. It's either 3 or 4. Her name's Kelly Zito. So that's part of this as well. It's very tiresome. It's wrong. People, it's embarrassing. People should be treated better. You who lead this company should realize that people need to be treated better. Yes, the conduct was not correct. We know this, but the punishment is far, far disproportionate than the actions that were done. And really need to look at this and remember who you are and where you work, and that you're supposed to be better than this at your job. And it's a bad joke. And those of you who are in leadership in this company, as I said, you should be ashamed. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So George, go ahead.
We had one more person for public comment, but you can go ahead and make your comment before I.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think George's comments are disturbing. I think it leaves us without a knowledge, and I'm a little troubled by George, your presentation. You kind of named some names and you know, lot of stuff to unpack there. I'm wondering, General Manager, if you have some suggestions on how I more fully respond or understand the situation George has brought up.
Yeah, so this is something that George brought to my attention last week. This is an ongoing disciplinary matter, and is something that Winnie is working on right now. So I just maybe leave it at that for now, and let us look at the information first before I go into any more details, other than sharing with you that this is something that's active.
All right. Thank you. Our next speaker.
Yvette Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Risha. This morning I spoke, actually about 10 minutes ago probably, and I said that the diversity, inclusion, and equity proposed plan was like an invisibility cloak. I said other things too, but it's always unsettling to hear about the district's new plan or to see posters being put up, because it always feels like, to me and others subjected to racism and discrimination and retaliation, that the district is just setting up another invisibility cloak to hide what's going on. I speak at these board meetings specifically so that I can pull down that invisibility cloak. A couple of weeks ago, the board of directors had the Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland civil rights lawsuit on their closed boardroom agenda. And at that meeting, I stated that EBMUD had filed in federal court their affirmative defenses for that lawsuit against Ariel and Saji. And I mentioned that they had 26 affirmative defenses. And I read for the public one of the affirmative defenses, and I'm going to read it now so that people know what it is. Number 4, defendants are informed and believe and thereon allege that plaintiff, that's Saji and Ariel, factual amended complaint, and each cause of action alleged therein is barred in whole or in part, and or recovery is precluded because the conduct of EBMUD was not willful or intentional. I mentioned at that meeting that I was going to ask the district for the Stanley McIntosh and I always forget the other plaintiff's name, but I was going to ask the district for the affirmative defenses that they used after the EEOC determined that EBMUD discriminated against those two men. And EBMUD couldn't provide it, but the Federal Archives in Palo Alto was able to provide it for me. And that lawsuit only had 4. And I'll just read off the titles really quick, and then I'm just going to end. And really, this is why I read the 1983 and the 2022 lawsuits or parts of it, is primarily because there's so many similarities. But some of the members on the board that have been here for up to 32 years I don't know, don't enact policies or procedures or make people accountable so that these type of lawsuits aren't continually filed. So the four affirmative defenses were lacking standing, that they didn't exhaust their remedies, that they were barred by laches, and that they didn't stand a claim. They didn't state a claim. And needless to say, those are also included in the 2022 lawsuit. I'm going to end there. I'll be speaking again at the 1 o'clock meeting, and I'll continue then. Thank you for your time.
All right, any other speakers?
We have no other speakers.
All right. Clifford, I want to just kind of do a bit of a time check here.
So,
since we got started late.
yeah, so this started late. We have about an hour for closed session, and then we have, if we do move forward with the Brown Act briefing, that's about a half an hour. So we can either push the Brown Act briefing to the next meeting, or we can start the regular session a little later. It's your choice.
Please push it over.
There's 2 votes.
All right.
3, 4,
Okay.
5,
I
6,
know
7.
you've prepared for this. You're all up for it and everything twice here.
I'm trying not to take offense, but I'm happy to push it off.
Okay, we will push it off and move it
It's
to
not you, Derek.
a future
I
meeting.
actually have a question, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but the briefing, it's always, I always actually pick something up from it. Is it a requirement that we receive a briefing? Can we just get the presentation in writing and have for our the closed session, or whenever we have it scheduled, just go straight to the questions and comments part and dispense with the presentation?
Well, so there's 2
I mean,
questions.
you know,
First one is it a requirement, Derek?
Well, so the resolution that set the requirement in the first place says that it shall be annually reviewed by the Board of Directors with a review of the Ralph M. Brown Act at the first board meeting of each calendar year or as soon thereafter as practical. So it really hinges on what reviewed means, and my understanding is that Clifford has asked one of the attorneys in our office to look into how we'll be interpreting this. So ideally, my feeling is that it should be a presentation so that you can ask questions if you want, but if there's a possibility that we can just present it in written format, we will look into that.
No, we should still be able to ask questions, but maybe we can, you can trust us to do our homework, and then we can raise our questions.
So why
at the
would
session.
we cut the presentation on this one and not on other ones? I mean, I'm not sure I'm too in favor of cutting the presentation, just because that's the way we tend to learn things. Andy?
As long as we can do it now.
I hear in that rule as soon as practical or practicable, and we've had some important agenda items that have made it impracticable to have a quality presentation and Q&A on the Brown Act. I support the annual review, and I think we just have had pressing business, and I'm not going to list all those items, and I hope that we can deal with this in the next meeting or 2.
Right. Okay. So let's, with that, we will now convene to discuss closed session items. We are scheduled to return for our regular board meeting at 1:15, probably more likely to hit that number today than if we had this presentation. So thank you. We'll see you there. Thank you. Welcome to our regular business meeting, the EBMUD Board of Directors on Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. In accordance with Government Section 54953E, this meeting will be conducted by webinar and teleconference only. The physical location will not be provided for this meeting. The board met this morning as a workshop to receive an update from the district's diversity, equity, and inclusion draft strategic plan. The Los Vaqueros JPA met on January 12th. The Freeport Regional Water Authority met on January 13th, and the Sustainability Energy Committee met this morning. Representatives will report out under item 14. All directors, including myself, are participating remotely. Please call roll, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman,
Present.
Director Katz,
Present?
Director McIntosh,
Here.
Director Mellon,
Present.
Director Patterson,
Present.
Director Young,
I'm here.
President Lenny.
Here. All directors, including myself, are participating remotely. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our first order of business is the approval of the 2022 board committee assignments. They were included in your packet. Any questions or anything about that? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to.
I will move, this is John, the recommendations.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that? Let's go ahead and have a roll call vote on that, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. All right, thank you all for that. Do want to make note that all committee assignments remain the same, except that Director McIntosh is now the chair of the Legislative and Human Resources Committee. No announcements from closed session. We are on to public comment. If members of the public wish to speak on an agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard at the beginning of the meeting in just a moment. Comments on agenda items will be heard when the item is up for consideration. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers. If we need that information, we'll have you contact staff directly. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time has concluded. So we're now at the point that if anybody has items or a public comment for items that are not on our agenda, now would be the time.
We have one hand for public comment at the moment, and that is Nick Lawrence. Nick Lawrence, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will start now.
Is this mic on?
The mic is on.
Newsflash, January forest fire near Big Sur, 1 square mile burned. Hundreds forced from their homes, structure burned, highway closed, 50% contained after 3 days. OES reports drought conditions remain throughout California. Back to you. Greetings again, East Bay MUD employees, members of the public, my friends on the board, and General Manager Chan. Welcome to another episode of A Dangerous Condition of Public Property, namely the out-of-service fire hydrant H14100, putting lives and property, ratepayers, and East Bay MUD itself at risk since March 11, 2020, when East Bay MUD's 8-inch water main broke. I'm Nick Lawrence of Orinda, your host for this episode 11 called The Gamblers. My email is eastbaymud@nicklawrence.com. Today, we'll talk more about the failures to correct the dangerous condition. What is known? The fire hydrant, the only one near my home with an 8-inch water supply, was a fire department precondition of the area subdivision back in 1978. East Bay MUD undertook to provide and install the water mains and fire hydrant, to keep accurate records thereof, and to inspect, test, and maintain same. Service laterals, that's the smaller pipes between the water main and the house meters, connected to the water main have leaked numerous times over the years, saturating the hillside, including at the time when the water main broke. Because of the water main broke, the fire hydrant remains out of service from 22 months ago. Fire hydrant maintenance may be a low priority, as several dozen additional East Bay Mud fire hydrants, perhaps one near your home, are also out of service. Because of East Bay Mud's failure to restore proper functioning of the fire hydrant, a dangerous condition of public property, a legal construct, has been allowed to exist. East Bay Mud top management, including General Manager Clifford Chan, managers Jimmy Yaloy, David Renstrom, and Mike Ambrose, and others, all with advanced degrees and positions of responsibility, are aware of this. Each has failed to expedite the repairs promised 10 months ago by General Manager Chan, the general manager's brother, who promised me that an 8-inch water main would be promptly set in place. East Bay Mud's strategic plan key performance indicators are not met when a dangerous condition of public property is allowed to exist. Meanwhile, the Bay Area continued to be pummeled by drought and red flag days. The board, sitting here today, signs off on the annual management bonus. We'll explore this more in later episodes. Each of these professionals are gambling that no fire loss or personal injury contributed to by the dangerous condition occurs. Such an event would be very costly and fully East Bay Mud's liability. The board would be within its rights and demonstrate responsibility to the community by denying bonuses to those individuals failing to use their best efforts to correct the dangerous condition. As did Clint Eastwood, we must ask, are you feeling lucky? What's next? Well, you can join the posse too if you like and share your knowledge of the situation. Tune in again next meeting, same time, for episode 12 of A Dangerous Condition of Public Property. Okay, we're on the official record and out of time. Posse members, keep those tips coming to eastbaymud@NICKLAWRENCE.com. That's it for now. Back to you, Risha.
We have no other hands for public comment. We just had one other hand pop. Give me one moment. Yvette Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will
Thank you,
start
Risha.
now. You're welcome.
Thank you, Risha. For those that don't know, I spoke at both meetings this morning, and after hearing the closed board comments or the public comments, I thought I'd shift gears for a second. I heard Mark Carradine's comments, and they pretty much echoed a lot of what I've been talking about this past year. I've spent a lot of time since finding out about the Saji Pierce Ariel Bland civil rights lawsuit, talking about that case and reading from it, and I'll continue to do that in the future. But I guess in honor of what I said this morning, that these policies, and I want to call it propaganda, are just an invisibility cloak to, I guess, distract people from all of the misogyny, racism, and retaliation that happens at the district. I'm gonna just continue to roll with unveiling some of the documents that have been, I guess, served to the district in the past, and one that I'm gonna read from right now. And I'm gonna end probably mid-sentence because I don't wanna go over my 3 minutes. In the lawsuit filed in 1983, McIntosh and Irving, in their claim, they said that on page or on paragraph 6, in addition to the acts of discrimination alleged in the paragraphs above, the allegation contained in each of the plaintiff's complaints to the EEOC, which are incorporated within, that defendant East Bay Mud, in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1866, has pursued and continues to pursue a policy and practice of discriminating against Black employees on account of race and color in respect to promotion, training, placement, and assignment, testing, and harassment. It has implemented these policies and procedures among other ways as follows. A, by failing to promote Black employees on the same basis as white employees. B, by establishing and maintaining arbitrary and unreasonable testing procedures, which have not been shown to have any significant relationship to job performance and have the effect of excluding qualified Black employees from promotions. C, by placing and transferring Black employees in an arbitrary and discriminatory manner. D, by refusing to train Black employees on the same basis as white employees. E, by harassing Black employees on the job, including the use of racial epithets. F, by failing and refusing to take adequate steps to eliminate the effects of its past discriminatory practices and acts. And G, by maintaining a policy that allows supervisors discretion in allocating job training opportunities, which perpetuates racially discriminatory training practices. I'm just going to end by saying that this governing power at EBMUD, the board of directors, can change the racist, misogynistic, and retaliatory culture at EBMUD, because it isn't rocket science. You need to stop giving impunity to racists, misogynists, and those that retaliate. You need to stop giving those individuals bonuses and promotions, and stop allowing managers to misrepresent employee performance in order to, I guess, set up desired candidates for promotions. That's all I have for right now. The other thing is, I worked at 4 other agencies, and this is the only agencies where managers and supervisors did not fear losing their jobs if they committed any acts of discrimination and retaliation. This is the only agency, and it's because it provides impunity to those people. Thank you.
All right, any other
I don't see
speakers?
any other hands for public comment.
So I will close the comment period now for the non-agenda items. And we'll move to consent calendar. I am pulling items 3.1 through 3.4 for discussion. Are there any other additional items that need to be pulled, or that board members would wish to be pulled?
I'll move the remaining items, President Lenny.
All right. I have a motion by Director Coleman, seconded by Director Patterson. We'll have a roll call vote.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. All right, I want to make special note that item 8 on the consent calendar was a confirmation of individuals for being standby officers for our board of directors for calendar year 2022, and expressed my appreciation and all the board's appreciation for those members to serve in that capacity. Then we are on to our public hearing.
We have item 3, President Lenny.
I'm sorry. That's why we pulled it to discuss. Thank you.
If I may, I'll just do a brief introduction on item 3. Is that okay with you, President Lenny?
Go ahead.
So we have 4 contracts for your consideration as part of the Orinda Water Treatment Plant Disinfection and Chemical Safety Improvements Project. These are items 3.1 to 3.4. In total, it's about $294 million. The cost for item 3.1, which is a construction contract, did come in over the engineer's estimate by about 20%, but this is less than what we've seen with other large water treatment plant projects in the Bay Area recently. The Orinda project is a high priority project that will make major upgrades to our largest water treatment plant and is unlike any other project that we've embarked on. We've been working on this project for many years and have provided multiple updates to the committee and board over those years to talk about the project details and benefits. I have Jimmy Ulloa here, the Director of Engineering and Construction, to provide a brief presentation to review the details of the bids, the reason why bid item 3.1 was over the engineer's estimate, and our recommendation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Clifford. Good afternoon, President Lenny and members of the board. I am pleased and excited to be here today at this significant milestone on the Orinda Water Treatment Plant Disinfection and Chemical System Safety Improvement Project. So this is just a brief agenda of what I'll be going through. I will review the project and what's entailed, and also the contracts that we have before you for consideration. I'll also review the actual construction bids and the reasons why those bids came in higher than we had estimated. I'll talk a little bit about how we mitigated the cost for this project, and also will mitigate the cost for any future projects, and then finish up with the recommended action. So you've seen this graphic before. It's an overview of the project. It has a number of components, but the main element of this is the disinfection improvements, which you see kind of on the right-hand side of the screen. The dark orange squares and then the light orange squares around that actually describe the main element of the project, which is the disinfection, ultraviolet disinfection system and chlorine contact basin, and which are underground, and above those are the maintenance and ultraviolet electrical building. The structure at that location will displace the existing ground maintenance building, which is being relocated over to the north side of the plant. On the left side of the screen, you'll see the ground maintenance building and the ground maintenance parking. We have electrical reliability improvements at the Los Altos pumping plant and a new standby generator and a new south electrical building. Those are on the right-hand side of the screen at the bottom. The next component are the chemical system safety improvements. Those will, we're upgrading all of the chemical systems at Orinda. There'll be temporary facilities installed while the permanent facilities are being installed. And then finally, we have wash water basin improvements, and also improvements to the bypass line that allows us to direct Freeport water into San Pablo Creek. So that's the overall project. The contracts that we have before you for consideration are the construction contract for the project. That's the $267.7 million contract award to Flatiron West. In addition to that, we have three contracts. Two of them are for engineering services during construction, and these are to continue to engage the designers for the different elements of the project. So Carollo Engineers was the engineer of record for the disinfection improvements, and Stantec was the engineer who designed the chemical safety improvements. And so we are retaining them during the construction period to help with the construction and making sure that the construction is done in accordance with the design. And then finally, we have one last contract for construction management and inspection support. This is going to Arcadis, and this is more of an as-needed contract. It is a significant amount because this is such a large project, but we are staffing the project with district staff who will be the primary construction managers and inspectors on the job. But because of a lot of the specialty type work in this job, the deep excavations, the tunneling, some of the electrical work, a lot of scheduling issues and cost estimating issues that we will need. Some of those specialties we will be utilizing Arcadis to provide those supplemental support services. We move on to the actual construction bid. So we received two bids for this project. The low bid was from Flatiron West at about $268 million. As General Manager Chan mentioned, this was about 20% over our engineer's estimate, which was about $220 million. And the reasons for that are primarily we are in an inflationary climate. The pandemic has contributed to that. But we're not alone. Actually, other recent large regional water treatment plant projects have ranged from 30 to 40% over engineers' estimates. And so when we compare against those, we're 20% over, which is a lot less than that. And we believe that's because we did put a lot of effort into preparing a very good set of bid documents that the bidders were able to see and understand. And that's exhibited by the fact that the two bids we got were within $3 million of each other. And you look at that on a $270 million type project, that's actually a good indicator that we had a good set of bid documents. But if we look a little bit deeper into the breakdown of the project costs and where did these costs go over? I've broken this down into the kind of the four major elements of the work. In all of the different elements, disinfection, the chemical safety improvements, and electrical reliability, there's material escalation in the market. Prices of materials have gone up. The supply chains have contributed to that. The disinfection improvements and the chemical safety improvements, and those elements, that was the main component, and we're about 8 to 12% over the estimate there. The bigger deviations were in the electrical reliability improvements, where there's actually a shortage of electricians. There's a very tight labor market, and in addition to materials escalation, and also supply shortages for the electrical materials. So that component actually was 84% over what we estimated for that. And then the final category, we have a number of challenging piping installations on our constrained site at the Orinda treatment plant and demolition work. So that adds to the complexity of the work. This project is going over about 4 to 5 years. So that long project duration and the need for continued and adequate quality control and quality assurance also contributed to the increased costs for the construction job. So I want to move on to we as our engineering staff and all of our staff we spent a fair amount of time analyzing the bids that came in and looking forward to other projects. We wanted to make sure we are doing all that we can to mitigate cost increases on our projects. On this project, as I said, I think we had very high quality and clear bidding documents. We also did pre-qualify contractors for this job. We recognized it was a significant undertaking, and we wanted to have contractors who were experienced and knowledgeable about the work to actually bid on the job. And I think that actually helped to get the best prices that we could get for this project. We will continue to do this for future projects. In this year, we also anticipate the Oakland Inner Harbor, Alameda Crossing, and also the Upper San Leandro Water Treatment Plant reliability improvements to also bid this year. Those will be significant contracts. On this contract and also on future contracts, we will continue to partner with our contractors to manage changes during the construction work and also control costs. So these are things that those first three bullets are things that we have been and will continue to do to make sure that we get the best prices for our jobs. But the reality is, as we've seen, we have inflation that has hit on these projects, and the costs are higher than we estimated in the original CIP. So we stepped back a little bit and took a look at our CIP and looked at what if we had a worst case scenario of all of our projects going over the estimate, what that would do to us. As we bring forward the Oakland Inner Harbor and the USL reliability upgrades for consideration, we will continue to do that and assess what that does to our CIP. We've preliminarily looked and identified certain projects that we might be able to defer if that worst case scenario comes up. But ultimately, we have the next round of the CIP budget to develop in later this year. and we will identify potential those potential CIP projects for deferral in the next budget cycle. So we'll continue to monitor the situation with respect to our CIP and make sure that we're addressing those issues. So finally, in conclusion, we do have these contracts on for your consideration today. We do recommend that we award the construction project. As you are all aware, it is a high priority project for us. We've been developing this over the last 3 or 4 years. We do believe we got high quality bids for this job, and we've had a significant investment in the design and in community outreach efforts that I think have put us in good stead to implement this project successfully. Naturally, the question comes up, well, with the higher cost, why couldn't we just defer this project? And our recommendation is not to defer the project. I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you for sure, but history tells us that rebidding contracts of this size and complexity, even at a future date, is not likely to result in lower bids than we have right now. And in addition to that, I think rebidding or delaying the project then diminishes our credibility in the eyes of our contracting community and also with the stakeholders with whom we've worked so hard to get to this point. So that's all I had. I'm glad to take any questions, but we do recommend that you approve the contracts for your consideration this afternoon.
Thank you, Jimmy. John, I see your hand up.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation, Jimmy. And I asked this question of Clifford yesterday. He was able to get back to me. I appreciate it. One, the bid is extremely high. Two, I support the contracts that are going forward. But I noticed in the BD1 that it said Flatiron was a foreign-owned company. And not that I have any opposition to foreign-owned companies doing bid work. The question arose not necessarily Flatiron, but just in general. Do we have a policy how to deal with foreign-owned companies in light of, I know that sometimes the State Department has there's homeland security risks and other risks, or we may be bidding a company from a country that has abhorrent human rights practices, may be putting bids in. What is our policy, or do we have a policy regarding how we look at going forward on such contracts?
Well, I'm not aware of a specific policy, but the Flatiron is a subsidiary of a German-owned company, but they have been in business in the United States since 1947. They have been active in a lot of contracts. They do actually have one contract with the district right now on the Maloney pumping plant and Sobrante electrical improvements. They have performed extremely well for us, and I understand they've also performed extremely well for other agencies that they've had contracts with. SFPUC for one on the Calaveras Dam. I think they were a joint venture on the Bay Bridge construction. And they also recently have a contract with Valley Water for the Anderson Dam Tunnel. So I can't say that I know that there's a specific policy against foreign-owned contracting firms, but this is a firm that has been, they may be a subsidiary of a foreign company, but they have been doing business in the U.S. for a long time.
Yeah, I will, Director Coleman, just add, I mean, at least to one part of your question about maybe concerns about safety, in particular cybersecurity. I mean, the board did fairly recently adopt a cybersecurity policy, which really addresses and makes sure that whatever we do meets not just the IT, the business side, but also the control system side, which will be running these plants, to make sure that we follow all those standards. And that is something that we do, and that is a policy that was fairly recently adopted by the board.
Thank you, Clifford and Jimmy. Maybe just a thought for the HR committee to look at whether or not there should be such a policy in the future dealing with companies that are foreign owned that maybe come from abhorrent practices that are contrary to what the values of not only East Bay Mud in this country are. Again, maybe that's going beyond the scope of what we need to look at, but it's not in the realm of the world we live in today, that there may be a company that can do the work, but they come from a country where those funds going back are propping up a government that is mistreating its people, put it that way. So I would ask, maybe Director McIntosh is going to share the late HR. I mean, I know I popped this right here, so sorry about that, Lisa.
No, you know, it's worth looking at, John, absolutely.
We'll take a look into that, Director Coleman.
Thank you. And with that, I'll move items 3.1 to 3.4.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Lisa McIntosh is a second. And any other board questions, comments? All right, looks like we're ready to move forward to a vote. Secretary, can you please take a roll call?
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jimmy, for that presentation, the clarification on this. This is a big project, important project for us. And I suspect we'll need to be taking a closer look at all of the projects in light of new circumstances or recent changes in inflation and worker shortage. So we're on to public hearing. This is items 9.1 and 9.2. We will conduct this as a public hearing to receive comments from any representatives from the Union Pacific Railroad Company with regard to on a resolution of necessity to acquire a temporary construction easement on a Union Pacific Railroad Company property. This is APN 74-906-41-1. It's adjacent to the Barnhill Marina in support of the Oakland Inner Harbor Pipeline Crossing Project. The public hearing is now open, and and we're going to have a brief presentation by staff.
Good afternoon, President Laney and board members. So as you may already know, the district will start construction on the new Oakland Inner Harbor Crossing Project later this year. And this is a $30 million plus project to ensure the 80,000 Alameda customers have reliable water service. So a project this size obviously has a lot of different components and many issues we have to address before construction. And one of those issues that we're dealing with right now is really securing all the necessary land rights and easement to support the installation of the pipeline. So today's public hearing will really allow us to initiate a process to prepare a temporary construction easement from Union Pacific in support of the overall project. Richard, next slide, please. So for some, just a brief background, the city of Alameda is served by 4 crossings, and Alice Street Crossing is one of those 4. And the new Oakland Inner Harbor Crossing project, shown in this blue line here on the picture here, will replace the existing Alice Street Crossing that was built in 1946, and that is shown in the dashed black line just north of that. And the little star next to the dashed black line is the subject property we're talking about today. And of course, for obvious reason, the new crossing is to improve, reliability of water for our Alameda customers. And as I mentioned earlier, the estimated cost for this project is approximately $30 million. And so any delay to a project this size could mean significant additional cost to our ratepayers. Next slide, please. So as part of the overall project, we have to abandon the Alice Street crossing once the new crossing is installed. Unfortunately, this is not a very straightforward abandonment, or not a simple one at least. since there are existing services that are connected to the existing crossing. So based on the sequence of work, we have to first relocate the 2 meters before any abandonment work can take place. And in order to relocate those 2 meters that is currently serving Barnhill Marina, we need a subsurface easement and also a temporary construction easement from Union Pacific. And back in May 2020, the board authorized the condemnation proceeding for the subsurface easement on this property. So this condemnation proceeding is currently in the hands of the attorneys and the courts. So in finalizing our design, staff recently learned that a temporary construction easement is also necessary in order for the district to access the location to perform the necessary underground work. And this temporary construction easement is directly above the underground easement that you see in this yellow box right here, but it's slightly larger. And also, since Union Pacific has been really unresponsive and unwilling to work with the district in 2020 during our prior offers for the underground easement, the condemnation for this construction easement is recommended for at this point. Next slide, please. So you have seen this slide before. To initiate eminent domain proceedings, we have to conduct a public hearing and allow the property owner, in this case Union Pacific, an opportunity to address the board here. And the board must adopt a resolution of necessity. In order to adopt this resolution, we have to make 4 findings. And these findings are, the project is necessary, the property rights are necessary to support the project, and the project will accomplish the least private injury and the most public good. And the offer of just compensation has been made to Union Pacific. Next slide, please. So first, the project is necessary, as I mentioned before, including the abandonment of the existing crossing once the new one is installed. This is one of the older crossing, and of course, in an earthquake could result in severe damages, which could impact the water service for our customers in Alameda. And for that reason, the new crossing is essential to ensure reliability. And as I mentioned before, abandoning the Alice Street crossing is an essential component of the overall project because we cannot keep the existing there in place, right? The existing crossing in its current place right now. Before the district can move forward with abandonment and complete the overall project, we do have to relocate the existing meters at Barnhill Marina, which is also why we need those 2 easements from Union Pacific. Next slide, please. So condemnation is never our preferred option, as you know. And in this case, the district has explored all possible options to relocate the meter to a different location in front of the property to avoid the railroad property. But all the alternatives we have looked at were invisible due to the existing utility conflicts along the frontage of the entire property. So we've done a lot of homework on there, and really there's no other viable options. So this leaves the Union Pacific property the only location where the district can install the new meter to serve Barnhill Marina. And in addition to the underground easements, now we need to, of course, add the temporary construction easement. Ultimately, the district needs both of those easements in order to perform our work to relocate the meters and maintain water service to Barnhill Marina before we can move forward with abandoning the existing Alice Street crossing. Next slide, please. So acquiring easement rights from Union Pacific would not harm the interest. In return, really, this project would deliver tremendous benefit for our Alameda customers. So I just want to point your attention to the 2 photos to the left. The railroad property is vacant right now, unimproved, and really have no track services at the moment, or even prior to that. It would be difficult for them to develop or use this property for any other purpose. You can see that is considered a remnant since the parcel is physically separated by the public road and also other adjoining properties from the larger piece of the parcel from the railroad. And to acquire this temporary construction easement, we had made an offer to Union Pacific. However, really given their lack of willingness from Union Pacific to negotiate with the district for a settlement during our earlier encounters for the original underground easement, it would be appropriate for us to move forward with this condemnation as well in order to get both matters settled in a timely manner to prevent any delay to the project. So next slide, please. So today I am requesting the board to adopt a resolution on necessity to authorize the general counsel to file eminent domain actions to acquire this property. And to the next slide. So I'm just going to pause here for a moment if you have any questions for me.
All right, any questions from the board?
No questions. We covered this earlier, so I would move.
All right, so we're going to, before we get to that portion
Okay.
of the hearing, I'm going to ask if there are any representatives from the Union Pacific Railroad Company on the line to address the board and provide any comments.
President Lenny, I don't see any hands raised from attendees.
Okay. Are there any other interested parties from the audience who wish to address the board on this matter?
No hands raised.
Okay. Before we conclude the hearing, I wanted to ask staff for any other final comments.
No additional comments. We just recommend the board to adopt the resolution.
All right.
Move to close.
Thank you. I have a motion to close the hearing. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, Lisa, a second. So I'll now ask for a roll call vote to close the public hearing.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon. Director Mellon, you're on mute.
That mute button, sorry. Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. All right, so the hearing is, public hearing is now closed. We're on to item 9.2, which is adopt a resolution of necessity. This is the resolution of necessity for eminent domain proceedings for the acquisition of a temporary construction easement from the Union Pacific Railroad Company, and to authorize the general counsel to prepare and proceed with such proceedings.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Director McIntosh, seconded by Director Patterson. Let's please have a roll call vote to adopt a resolution of necessity.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes, so that carries unanimously. Okay, we're now on to determination and discussion. General Manager Chan.
Yes, first we have the appointment of Timothy Klein as Attorney 2, and Derek McDonald will introduce this item.
Yes, good afternoon, President Lenny and members of the board. I am pleased to recommend for your consideration and appointment today Mr. Timothy Klein as Assistant Attorney in the Office of General Counsel. Mr. Klein has a Bachelor of Arts with a focus on environmental issues from UC Berkeley and received his law degree from UC Berkeley School of Law. Prior to starting law school, he worked with government agencies and nonprofits to co-found the Southern Sierra Prescribed Fire Council, which works with agencies, regulators, tribes, and members of the public to support the use of prescribed fire as a land management tool. Since graduating from law school, he's practiced in both litigation and an advisory capacity. After graduating from law school, he worked with the law firm of Morris & Forster, where he developed both litigation and advisory skills in areas including environmental compliance and land use matters. He then moved to a small firm in order to have the opportunity to more directly represent nonprofits, tribes, and businesses in both state and federal court. There, because of the size of the firm, he was required to further hone his litigation skills as he managed all aspects of litigation from start to finish. Mr. Klein's informed us that he's very much looking forward to moving from private practice into true public service at the East Bay Municipal Utility District, and we are excited to have him join the Office of General Counsel and jump into the numerous matters we are currently working on.
Thank you, Derek. We need a A motion to move this
Also
item?
move the item.
Second.
All right, this is moved by Director Coleman, seconded by Director Katz. We'll now take a roll call vote.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh, Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
You bet.
President Lenny.
Yes, so that carries unanimously.
Thank
And
And I see that Mr. Klein is with us this afternoon and would like to say a few words, if that's all right.
that'd be great.
Thank you, Derek, for the introduction. I'll just say briefly, I'm very pleased to be joining the district and to be working with you all and with all staff.
Thank you very much. Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
An attorney who speaks briefly, remarkable.
That'll be the last time. So,
Yeah,
Always with the lawyer jokes, Frank.
yeah.
That's because they come so easily, Lisa.
Tell me about it.
John, is your hand up?
It is. I'd like to welcome Mr. Klein. Timothy, I read the information about you. And we have at least at some point, some parallel paths where my first 2 years of college were in forestry. Then I was in the College of Natural Resources at UC Berkeley. So that's about where it ends. Having said that, but I'm glad that you're coming on board. And since I chair Upper McCullough River Watershed Authority and a lot of our issues are forestry related, I suspect I'll be, as will Director Patterson, be working closely with you on issues related to those UMRA issues and other wildland issues. So welcome aboard.
I look forward to it.
He's particularly interested in the fact that you went to UC Berkeley.
Yeah.
Of course.
I was waiting
He's
for
wearing
that
the
part.
wrong color tie.
Congratulations, Timothy.
thank you for joining us, Tim. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, moving on. Next, we have a resolution observing the life and public service of Gail Berkley-Armstrong, and Director McIntosh will introduce this item.
Yes, thank you for this. Gail Berkley-Armstrong, daughter of the Bay, voice of a community. Gail, a legendary award-winning Bay Area journalist and Sun reporter editor, was born January 5th, 1947 in Berkeley, to attorney and Oakland Post founder Thomas Berkley and Etta Jordan Hill, an educator and artist. Gail attended Berkeley Public Schools, was exposed to the diversity of cultures within the Bay Area and beyond her parents, who were described as trailblazers and courageous individuals who did not take no for an answer. Described as a Bay Area institution, Miss Berkley-Armstrong was known as a quiet genius who truly listened to the people she interviewed. However, while never confrontational, it was always clear she meant business and spoke her mind. Beyond her work as a journalist, Gail Berkley-Armstrong served on the boards of community-based organizations in the San Francisco Bay Area, including Bay Area Urban League, Inc., Bay Area United Fund, Dimensions Dance Theater, Inc., and Black Adoption Placement and Research Center. She was also co-founder of the Cacao branch of Children's Hospital Oakland, fundraising to ensure that all children receive the best health care regardless of their family's ability to pay. Gail Berkley-Armstrong's life and career were both an example of dedication and a testament of service. She was truly a daughter of the Bay and the voice of the community. And Bill Patterson and I really wanted this resolution to be on our agenda today because she was truly a dedicated public servant. And with that, I move the resolution.
I would second the resolution with this comment. I was privileged to know and serve with Gail on many of the bodies that are mentioned in the resolution. The father was a very good friend. And as a pioneer in the women's section of history here in the Bay Area, I just compliment Gail and the family and wish to add these final words. Gail ascended the ladder on the 26th day of December. That's the same day Dell was headed up. So I hope they're both together. They were friends in Berkeley and in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Yes.
And emotion. Thank you, both of you, for that presentation. Let's have a roll call vote.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes, it carries unanimously.
Thank you, directors, and thank you, Directors McIntosh and Patterson.
Thank
Next,
you all for that.
next, we are 3 actions related to the 2021 to 2025 MOU and other special agreements between the district and Local 39. In addition, there are also salary and benefit recommendations for the senior management team, managers, confidentials, and non-represented employees. And I believe, President Lenny, there's an announcement for you to read related to that latter part.
That's right. So the announcement is that pursuant to section 54953, subsection C, subsection 3 of the government code, the Board of Directors provides this oral report prior to taking action on the salary schedule, and the compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits paid to the members of the senior management team, including the general manager and the general counsel. In accordance with the employment agreements with the general manager and the general counsel, the board may authorize the same general salary increases and benefits to the general manager and the general counsel as that granted to district employees at the department director level. As such, it is recommended that the general manager and the general counsel each receive a 4% increase in their annual salary, commensurate with the 4% increase being granted to all district employees in this action effective April 26th, 2021. The 4% increase consists of a cost of living increase. Additionally, it is recommended that the following members of the senior management team also be granted a 4% increase in their current annual salary, commensurate with the increase being granted to all district employees in this action effective April 26, 2021. The Secretary of the District, the Director of Customer and Community Services, Director of Engineering and Construction, Director of Finance, Director of Human Resources, Director of Operations and Maintenance, Director of Wastewater, Director of Water and Natural Resources, Special Assistant 4 in Legislative Affairs, Special Assistant 3, Office of Diversity, Equity, and Culture, and Special Assistant 4, Public Affairs. The current salaries are contained in the salary schedule authorized by the board and on file with the Secretary of the District. It is also recommended that the general manager and the general counsel and the senior management team members receive the same health and fringe benefits as provided to all other district employees in this action, as modified in the memorandum of understanding to be approved by this action. Changes to the benefits also include changes to the following: supplemental health benefits, district paid deferred compensation administrative fees, deferred compensation match for new employees subject to the Public Employees Pension Reform Act, vacation sellback, the addition of Juneteenth as the district paid holiday, safety shoe allowance, one-time pandemic compensation. Are there any board questions before we take a vote on this? We need a motion and a second.
I'll move.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I put everybody to sleep with that, I think.
I wasn't muted. I was muted. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Make a
Do we have
motion.
any public comment, Doug?
Yeah, we should ask if there is public comment, but yeah, in any case, we have a motion by Director Young, seconded by Director Coleman. Are there any public comments?
There are no hands for public comment.
Okay, any discussion by board members? Okay, then let's have a roll call vote, please.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
I'm abstaining because there's an element involved with this that involves holidays, which I have some objection to. Not the Juneteenth holiday, but the issue that we have Juneteenth, but we're continuing to honor presidents who are either slaveholders, segregationists, peonage expediters, and also folks that supported internment of people on account of their race or ethnicity. So because of that, I cannot, in good conscience, support something that is so inconsistent. Juneteenth is appropriate, but maintaining recognition of those persons that were in that capacity is not appropriate.
All right, so one abstention.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. All right, measure carries with 6 ayes and 1 abstention. That completes items 12A through 12C.
Thank you. And moving on to the general manager's report, I have 2 items. The first is the coronavirus update. I'll just share with the board. Since January 1st, we've had 184 employees test positive for COVID. This surge is similar to what we've seen in the counties and state. It appears we're past the peak, both of the district and the surrounding counties. And I'm cautiously optimistic that the downward trend will continue. We have Dave Briggs, Director of Operations and Maintenance, who will provide a more detailed update.
Thank you, Clifford. Good afternoon, President Lenny. Good afternoon, members of the board. And with control of the presentation here, I'll go to slide 2. And so as the general manager was mentioning, what we're showing here on slide 2 is the number of positive cases in Alameda and Contra Costa County. And as Clifford was mentioning, we are seeing a downslope in cases recently after the steep increase beginning in mid-December. So just about every demographic you want to look at nationally, California, Bay Area, we're seeing the same trend. And I'll make some remarks about the district's own data in a moment. But yeah, we are headed the right direction. So that's really good to see. But really remarkable, the magnitude of this peak compared to the prior ones. So here are some numbers on slide 3. Our latest count is 373 positives through this morning and 32 contractor positives to date. And at this point, we're over 200 cases in the last 4 weeks since just after Christmas. And below at the graphic, you can see that contrast. The blue is showing the last 4 weeks of positives, and the red is everything that happened before that. So you can really see the change there. But I will say this to end with on an optimistic note here, that in the first 3 weeks of that 4-week period, we were seeing 8, 9, 10, and I think on one day 12 cases that we needed to process. But just in the last 4 or 5 days, that count is basically 3, 4, and 5. So I never thought I'd be happy about those numbers, but compared to the first 3 weeks, we're 30%, 40% of where we were a few weeks ago. So we're down. Let's hope this trend continues, and we're finally getting past this surge. So just operationally, we do have over 100 people who are unable to make a contribution today because they're out for some COVID reason, or not feeling well, or quarantined, or in isolation. So throughout the pandemic, this number has ranged between 1 or 2 dozen. So this number is substantially higher where we are right now. But that number is stable, and it's stable for a lot of reasons. when we adopted the new quarantine and isolation requirements, which I'll talk about in the next slide, those timeframes are shorter, so we're getting people back. The close contacts is really low, so every time we do get an employee who's positive, it's good to see that most of the time the number of close contacts at work are very low, if not zero, and that's just plain and simply great practice by our employees following the rules and staying away from each other, because that really does minimize impacts. Additionally, of course, if you're asymptomatic and vaccinated, you can come to work the next day if you are exposed. So all of those things really help. And since this has been going on for a while, the people that did go out in the early part of January are now already back at work. So all those things are keeping the situation stable. But just wanted to make clear that we are getting our day-to-day work done. And so that's been manageable to a large extent. And no employee is in the hospital with COVID, even after this massive surge that we've seen. And so finally, just to give you a sense of what we've been working on, we of course have embedded and adopted and integrated the new Cal OSHA requirements, which have reflected the new changes at the state health level. So these, by and large, give employees an opportunity to have a shorter isolation and quarantine period if they test negative. So that's a pathway back to work in a quicker time frame, which is very helpful. The Cal OSHA and California DPH guidelines and regulations also distinguish a new form of being fully vaccinated. So if you are booster eligible but unboosted, you are considered unvaccinated as far as the state is concerned with respect to quarantine and isolation. To be in the truly vaccinated category as far as the state is concerned and local county health order, I might add, you must have your booster shot if you are booster eligible. We have extended paid leave for district employees who are recovering from any illness from getting the booster shot. So that leave has been offered, and it's retroactive back to December when it expired under a prior protocol. We are aware that about 2 hours ago, the governor and the legislature have announced new leave is available, but we have not read through the text of that bill. We will do that immediately and, of course, implement everything that's appropriate. But that's very real-time news. I think it's 40 hours, I believe I saw, but I literally just saw it a couple of hours ago. We have a very expansive district COVID-19 testing program, which has been a godsend in the first few weeks of this surge because we were probably the only ones around that had the testing capabilities. So that's been very helpful in helping our employees get back to work as well. We will ramp that down as the caseload starts to drop. The face covering requirements were upgraded last week. So for those that are unvaccinated, which is by and large the exempted employees, they must wear an N95 or KN95 mask. Other employees are recommended to wear one. We have delayed the return to office to about 5 weeks. So we expect to see people coming back in the later part of February. And of course, the ongoing exercise of just continuing to monitor and train and educate employees on what they can do to keep themselves safe and everybody else around them, ongoing issue, which takes a lot of energy. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you.
I don't see any questions. Okay, moving on. The last update is our water supply update. As the board's aware, December has been a good month for precipitation. January has been and continues to be dry. There are some signals that high pressure ridge that's just been parked in front of the state might start moving east. It's not clear if this will materialize into much rainfall, but that's yet to be seen. Our water supply situation is still good, and Dave Briggs will provide the full update.
Okay, thank you again, Clifford, and good afternoon again. So we'll just transition to slide 3 and just get into some of the more details for what Clifford just gave an overview of. So slide 3 is our water production. The red line is this fiscal year, and we're still, for the fiscal year, we're still about 10% below where we were last year, which is shown in green. I would point out that, as you can see, if you look carefully, The red line is starting to approach the green line in the month of January, and that's indicative and reflective of the very dry and warm month we've had. We are seeing a proportionally larger response east of hills, possibly people being tempted to irrigate in the month of January, but we have, that's just really a reflection of the weather we've been having. And upcountry, not much to talk about in the month of January at all. But October and December were so large that we are still well above average, even with such a dismal January upcountry. And locally, similar story, we're still well above average for the entire year, but not much to tally in the month of January, and still riding on the very wet group of storms that we saw in October and December. And as Clifford mentioned, yeah, we're expecting the high pressure ridge to break down over the weekend. Northern California should see a storm track across. It's unclear if that's going to track as far south as the Bay Area. It may not, but we're hopefully going to see the ridge break down and have a wetter February. Our snowpack this year, which is shown in red, is pretty much spot on our average, our long-term average. So we are doing okay there. And with storage, we are at 515,000 acre feet total. That's up 15,000 from the last board meeting. You'll see in a slide or two that that's expected to continue upwards, even under a dry hydrology, because we've got such a high snowpack. But we are headed in the right direction. PG&E upcountry, upstream of us, is dumping a lot of water. They don't want to spill, and they see the large snowpack above them. So we're taking all that water, passing it through Pardee, generating and filling the hole in Comanche, essentially, which is where we need to recover most of the storage. But otherwise, we're doing okay. Statewide, the snowpack in the Sierras is dropping with respect to the season to date normal, just because we've had such a dry January, but still above 100%. So we're still above normal, which is good. And just this graphic shows some of the larger storage reservoirs. These are mostly federal reservoirs in the Central Valley Project. You can see in the dark line there, the dark line is the storage capacity of each reservoir. The red line is the normal for this time of year, January 20th, and the blue is where we are today. So you can see, for example, Shasta Reservoir on the left, the CVP's crown jewel, that's still well below where it should be this time of year. And that's true for Trinity as well. Folsom, on the other hand, is actually spilling. It's pretty much undersized for the American River, so that is actually in a spill condition right now. And the state, whose storage is primarily held in Oroville, is actually pretty close to normal. The state allocation announced last week of 15% for its contractors is a bit generous for this time of year, considering we're still in a drought, but it may be indicative that the state is looking at its supply held in Oroville and feeling pretty good about it. And then finally, just again, looking at our storage, we're 515, and even under a dry hydrology, which we labeled a 90%, so that means 90% of the hydrologies statistically that we see from this point moving forward are going to be wetter than what this red line is. So it's very conservative. And you see that it's trending upward. If you looked at the one from a year ago in January, the second board meeting in January of 2021, we were more or less at the same storage condition, actually a little bit higher. But that red line was trending downward because we did not have the antecedent conditions and the snowpack that we have already accumulated. So that red line is still trending upward. So we are optimistic that statistically speaking, we have a very good chance of filling our storage this year and being well above 500,000 acre feet. And Director Mellon, I see you have a question.
Yeah, so that red line means if we don't get another drop of rain the rest of the year, that's where we're going to wind up. Am I correct?
Not quite, Director Mellon. If so, I have to be careful and slow when I explain this because it gets a bit tricky. So under the driest year we have ever seen in the McElmy watershed was 1976 from January 1st forward. Okay, that's essentially equivalent to what we would call a 99% exceedance because it's basically the driest thing we've ever seen. That had 8 inches from January 1st through the rest of the water year. So even under this very dry scenario, we are still, and in the 90 you would see even more than that. So even under these dry scenarios, we're still expecting to see 8, 10, 12 inches of rain in the McElmy just to stay on that red line. But it is highly, highly, highly likely. And in case you're wondering, well, what happens if we see actually 0? The 0 rain to come, which we have never seen, would get us to 420,000 acre-feet of carryover storage. We don't show it on here. It's a bit of an extreme condition. I would say it is an extreme condition, not a bit.
Thank you.
How is runoff going? So last year we had a extreme situation of the ground being so dry that we weren't getting groundwater runoff draining into the McElmy. How are those conditions appearing?
So Director Katz, we're forecasting about 510,000 acre-feet of runoff this year. Last year we got 210. And we were surprised. We did have snow last year, but because the ground was so dry and the antecedent conditions were so dry, so for weeks and weeks and probably months, we saw nothing. That snow never materialized as river flow, whether it was transpiration or evaporation or a combination of vegetation uptake or all the above. We didn't see that up and down the Sierras. No one saw that in terms of snow appearing as river flow. So with hopefully, if it stays reasonably wet in the spring, we will not see that type of a runoff condition happen again. But right now, we're forecasting over 500,000 acre-feet to run off into the river and for us to capture. And last year we saw 210.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, that was the last report for my reports.
All right, thank you, Dave, for both of those reports. We will now move to reports and director comments. Minutes from the January 11th, 2022 Planning and Legislative Human Resources Committees are included in the agenda packet. And we'll receive reports now from this morning's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Workshop, the January 12th Los Vaqueros Reservoir JPA meeting, January 13th FRWA meeting, and today's Sustainability Energy Committee meeting. And I would just say, great workshop this morning. Thank you again, staff, for all the preparation of that. Queued up a number of questions and good discussion. We received the latest updates to the plan. Staff is scheduled to incorporate feedback received and present the final plan for board adoption in February. So let's go ahead and move on to the Los Vaqueros Reservoir JPA. Director Coleman.
Great, thank you, President Linney. We did hold our meeting on January 12th, and we had the election of treasurer. It's Paul Sethi from Alameda County Water, and we had talked about committee assignments, of which I requested 2 committee assignments that are important to EBMUD, and the chair of the JPA, Angela Holmes from Zone 7, will be making a decision as to who serves on those committees.
All right, thank you. Would you also talk about FRWA?
Yeah, FRWA, we met on the 13th, again remotely. And I'm happy to report that Bill Patterson is now the vice president of Freeport Regional Water Authority, and Supervisor Kennedy from Sacramento County is now the chair. We had an update on all the operations and preview of the budget that's going to be coming before Freeport for approval in April.
Excellent. Director Young, can you report on Sustainability Energy Committee?
Sure. We heard one item today, and it was update on the challenging situation that we face with biosolids management post-treatment due to legislation that requires us to, change practices, and it's a challenge that's facing many water districts, wastewater districts throughout the state. But our staff is on it and thinking forward about how to address the issue, both at a policy level as well as at a, an enterprise level in the coming years.
Great, thank you. Please submit any items for future consideration to the general manager. And as our last item, director comments. Are there any director comments? Things that we didn't cover today? Dr. Coleman and Director Patterson.
Great, thank you very much, President Linney. I've submitted written comments. This is a comment that I've had discussions with President Linney and Clifford Chan about, and I've also raised this at the Los Vaqueros meeting a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. I would like to see us put in place a policy. It's not to admonish or criticize or any board member, but more for transparency. When we have an agenda item before us, that we can provide it in writing, which you can in your board comments, or at the beginning of the meeting that I spoke to so-and-so regarding this agenda item or whatever. It's just transparency so everybody knows what's going on, not saying there should be a penalty if one doesn't do it, because one could forget about something easily enough, but just transparency so the entire board and everybody knows what's going on. And I hope that we will be able to bring this forward at a future meeting for policy adoption.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Director Patterson.
Two quick things. The latter of which happened last Friday, and I wanted to thank Clifford for sitting in with me. I met with Linda Cole, and Linda Cole is on the State Water Control Board, and she's the newest addition. She is a woman of color, and I had the pleasure of meeting with her so that in future I might be of assistance to her and would have a link into somebody who can help us go forward in league of helping the state of California through our efforts, experience, and long-time service over 100 years, which leads us into our century-long existence. The other is that I've been invited to continue meeting with the White House Advisory Committee on Environmental Justice. And those meetings will take place Thursday and Friday of this week. And I guess, John, we got up country on Friday as well. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone. Our next
Can I make a request?
Andy, go ahead.
Thanks. Director Coleman made a very good comment about procurement and the concerns around the appropriateness of companies that may have social responsibility records or problematic social responsibility records. I'd like this to be considered in the appropriate committee. When it's time for policy adoption, that would be the kind of thing I would expect to be at the Finance and Administration Committee. So I'll leave it to staff to look at our committee roles. If there's something legislative that we're going to be advocating to the state legislature, that would be appropriate too. For policy development for sustainability, maybe that committee should look at some of the principles that would inform a written policy. So I support continuing work along the lines of what Director Coleman mentioned in the earlier item.
Yeah. And it would be great on LegHR.
It's like everybody wants a hand in it. All right, any other director comments? All right, with that, the next regular meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 at 1:15. This meeting is now adjourned.